We need money that is unconfiscatable, immutable, all the things we all know about Bitcoin. No third-party risk. You know, we look at the FTX example. We don't want a third-party risk. We want peer-to-peer money. We don't want people telling us what we can do with our money.
So mass adoption is clearly a playoff of Massachusetts, MASS, where we're all from, and mass adoption is the adoption of Bitcoin as a new sound form of money. I mean, what mass adoption is to me, and what it means to me, is basically trying to bring together like a group of people that believe in Bitcoin and what it can do to help like move our society and humanity forward in a great way, like peacefully, and like bring prosperity to the world, basically, in a peaceful way. Basically a new form of money.
Mass adoption is our attempt to join like-minded people in this growing revolution, we hope, which we call Bitcoin. And it's tough to find people out in the world that truly understand what Bitcoin is. So this monthly meetup is a chance for people that understand and are deep down the rabbit hole to converse with each other.
It came out of a trip that me and two of my friends took down to Austin, Texas last March, and we were at a Bitcoin meetup down there in Austin, and we had the chance to meet up with Matt Odell and Marty Bent, and got to see sort of the vibe down there with like Unchained Capital and everything. And we were at a break during one of the sessions, and it was Matt Odell who said, like, do you have a Bitcoin meetup in Boston? And we sort of scratched our heads and we were like, not really. Like, there's some blockchain events, some crypto stuff, like kind of all inclusive, but we haven't really found like a Bitcoin only meetup. And Matt Odell was like, start it, just do it. And we were like, oh my God, like, I guess we could. So we came back, and that was sort of like the impetus of it. And I think the first month that we did a Bitcoin meetup was May of 22. And it was just like 5 of us the first time, and but through that we sort of like kept it consistent, and in June we had a few more people, and I think that's when I met Jeff after one of those meetups, and he was like interested in helping organize and continue to push the event forward and get like more interest in it, and that's when we decided to title it Mass Adoption.
There was a time on the Cambridge ones, it was just an informal get-together, and whoever was running the meetup would never show. And I almost thought of, should I try to, I don't say take this over, but I thought about that, and I thought about what would I want in a meetup, and I was like, well, you know, you'd want to have some informal stuff, you'd also want to have maybe some planned events, speakers of that nature. So I feel like the guys running Mass Adoption are really doing a great job of, I think, mixing both topics, and that's what I'm looking for, right? Sometimes you just want to come and kind of talk to individuals, learn about their stories, just bond. And other times it's nice to have speakers like Greg Foss, who was here a few months back, and so I think they've struck the right balance of you know, alternating between those two different types of events.
One of the things that I often do in my education is listen to a lot of different podcasts as I'm driving to work. That's just my media of choice. And I hear all of these different people in the community talking about going to different meetups, and you hear about Texas and Tennessee, Austin, all of these different hubs where there's all these Bitcoiners who are getting together and talking. And I heard about the value of having real in-person conversations, and we're not just, you know, cartoon characters at the end of a Twitter account. There's real people here who have real problems and who need real solutions. So I said, is there anything around me? So I had heard about all these different apps that post meetup links, and I saw that there was one here in the greater Boston area, which isn't too far from where I am. So that motivated me to come, and I've been hooked ever since, because, you know, rather than taking all my energy out talking to everyone about this and them not hearing it, I can come here and talk to people who actually understand, and, you know, bounce ideas back and forth off of people, and also so that I can continue to learn myself, because every time you feel like you understand something, there's someone you can talk to who you can learn more from.
Everybody has their journey. I mean, mine's too long to talk about right now, but basically I did get introduced to it in 2015 when I ran a real estate company with 3 other partners, and we had some extra desk space in our Palo Alto office, and we decided we would rent the extra 4 desks that we had to a small startup company, just in hopes that they would grow and they would become a client of ours and we could help them find new office space. Well, it turns out they were a Bitcoin company called, I think it was called like Buttercoin, and they decided that after a few months they came to us and said, hey, can we pay you for our desks in Bitcoin instead of regular dollars? And I looked at my partners, I said, do you guys care if we like accept Bitcoin? I mean, it's only 4 desks, it's not that much money, and hopefully they'll like grow and they'll become a client. And so we all agreed, like, sure, fine, we'll accept Bitcoin. So we unbeknownst to ourselves at the time, like, we're landlords and accepted Bitcoin for rent, basically, you know, for these 4 desks. And they stayed there for about 6 to 9 months back in 2015, paid us Bitcoin every month, and we didn't even think about it. And then until about 3 years later, or maybe it was 2 years later, 2017, when the Bitcoin price started going up and everybody started focusing on it. And we said, do we still have that Bitcoin, you know, from the rent? Do we still have that? Like, because they had gone out of business and everything, and sure enough, we were able to find it on Coinbase, and so we actually got into Bitcoin before we even knew we were getting into Bitcoin. And so for me personally, it was really around 2017 where I kind of started to understand really what it was that we had accepted at that time and what it meant, and started going down my own, you know, rabbit hole journey. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. So cool that you just kind of fell into it.
Well, I think we were just, you know, the lesson I take away is we were entrepreneurial enough to sort of break from the traditional. No, we can only accept dollars. Like, you know, we're so rigid, we can't accept and see something new. And even though we didn't know what Bitcoin was at the time, we were open-minded. And we were willing to take a risk on this young company that was playing in a new form of currency. And I think that's the lesson I took away from it is, you know, always have an open mind, be willing to learn about new things, and you never know like what you're dealing with.
My Bitcoin story started about 2013, 2014. I lived in India back then, and I learned I was into computer science. I was a computer science undergrad student. I learned about Bitcoin through some internet forums, a little bit through my dad, and then started mining Bitcoin. Was mining it for almost two years and had about little less than 3 Bitcoin, bought some, mined some, and had 3 Bitcoins. The Indian government banned it. I sold all my Bitcoin. And then 2 years later, I moved to America. And then Bitcoin went on a big bull run. And then I started learning about what hard money is, why selling all my Bitcoin was a big mistake, why nobody can seize your Bitcoin and things like that. And that just fascinated me, like the technology and the whole aspect, the way the Bitcoin white paper brings simple technologies together to make something very unique. That kind of blew my mind, and ever since then I have been a Bitcoiner.
It was late 2013 and I was in graduate school and I was listening to a lot of podcasts, you know, I like doing this monotonous work, and there was a podcast I listened to called The Stuff You Should Know podcast. It's on the How Stuff Works Network. Great podcast. They did an episode on Bitcoin in 2013, shortly after the Mt. Gox fell apart and happened. So it was in the news a little bit then, and that's how I originally found out about it. And then it was late 2013 or early 2014 that I finally bought my first Bitcoin. But before I was really hooked, I like to learn everything for myself, do my own research, and think from first principles. So after hearing that podcast, the first thing that I did was go and read the white paper. I thought, it'd be interesting to go read, here I am studying geochemistry, it'd be interesting to see what a computer science paper looks like. So that was the white paper. I read it, I kind of understood it, circled back to it, but from then on, I've been interested in Bitcoin and buying it and using it. And here I am now.
So in 2017, my friend showed me a documentary called Banking on Bitcoin. I was a sophomore in college and put some money in before that run up, and I saw, my fiat increase like by 4 or 5x, and I was hooked. But then obviously the crash happened, and I remember thinking to myself, like, well, this Bitcoin thing's cool, but like, why do I have to use a Coinbase to get it? Like, doesn't that defeat the whole purpose? Like, it's supposed to be decentralized. So kind of put it on the back burner as I went throughout college. And then sure enough, when 2020 came and they sent us all home for the pandemic, when I got sent a stimulus check, I knew something was deeply wrong. So I started going down the Bitcoin rabbit hole, and sure enough, the more I learned, what I initially got in for was the fiat gains, think, oh, number go up technology. And then as I stayed and learned more about it, I realized this is a tool for freedom, and one that can bring abundance and peace and prosperity to the rest of the world, so we don't have, the 12 individuals deciding what money should cost and creating it out of thin air on a whim.
I got in through the frustration of the current financial system because I worked as hard as I could throughout my childhood to progress myself and learn as much as I could. I went to school for engineering. I got a decent job, and I started saving my money, working while I was living at home, and saving my money so that I could start my life. And I went out looking to buy a house at the beginning of 2020, and the housing market was as bad as it was. So frustrated with as much of the money that I was saving, living at home, which was plenty from what I thought to buy a house, I told myself I need to figure out how to make more money on the side, because even though I'm working all these hours at work, I need more money to exit, my parents' house, and so I can move on. So I went down this rabbit hole of what is money, how do you make money, how do you start a business, and I started looking into all of these other options, like you can buy and sell stocks, you can look at real estate and all that, and at the end of the day, it all ended at a dead end. And I started looking towards technology, because being an engineer, I always thought that technology might be the solution. How can I leverage what I know as an engineer to put myself in a better position financially? And then I started dabbling in all of these stocks that went nowhere, because I thought I could trade because I knew math. And of course, I learned that the system is rigged against us. So I went into all of these different podcasts and started learning about this thing called blockchain. I'd heard it once before, I didn't know much about it, and it turned into an education about money. So I thought I was going to learn about technology, and then I had learned that the current financial system is built on theft and inflation. So I learned about money, and then I learned about all of these other coins and these different blockchains that might be able to help us. And after a short run through Bitcoin and Twitter and everything, I learned that there's only one true answer, and that's Bitcoin. So that motivated me to learn more, learn to program, and learn more about money. And come to events like this. So that's why I'm here.
After about 35 years of opening and founding businesses, running businesses, I closed my last business right before COVID, right during COVID, and that allowed me a lot of free time, and I just started listening to podcasts, and I couldn't believe what I was listening to. And the more I would listen to podcasts and read books about Bitcoin, I would say, this is real. And then every week I'd get more of a feeling of this is really something special. And here I am today. I'm a big believer in Bitcoin. It was a challenging time for me. I mean, I'd worked 35 years, 7 days a week, and thinking I knew how the system worked. And then the more I ventured into Bitcoin, the more I realized I had no idea how the system worked. And so it was a tough transition, but then I feel as empowered as I've ever felt, because Bitcoin is truth. And when you learn the truth, everything else seems trivial, and Bitcoin gives you strength and power to do the right thing in life and build a prosperous future. You know, I have children, so that's kind of why I do this, to spread the word for a better future for our kids.
I work in financial services, so I work for an asset manager, relatively kind of mid-tier one, 5 to 600 billion in assets under management. And what I do is I'm a product developer. So if we need to launch a new investment strategy or a new mutual fund, so I'm usually in the middle, sometimes making the proposal to launch the new product, and then I organize people around the organization, from the investment team to people in legal and operations, to actually bring the strategy to life and turn it into something we can actually sell to investors. So that's what I've done at this particular firm. It's been a little over 10 years. And even prior to that, we used to work at Fidelity doing similar type stuff. So I've been doing that since about 2005. And then prior to that was business school and trading before that. I wish I could say that, oh my goodness, there's this huge intersection of what I do for a living and Bitcoin. I know that there obviously are plenty of asset management companies out there that are launching Bitcoin futures ETFs, or firms in Europe launching actual Bitcoin ETFs, and there's definitely financial services developing around the space. But I was just telling someone out there that while I am one hand, because I want to focus on Bitcoin more, I would love to launch a Bitcoin ETF, for example. But then I think from a philosophical standpoint, I think people should buy their Bitcoin and hold their keys, not buy it through an ETF. And so it's like I can't get over that psychological barrier. That's not the right way to own Bitcoin. So I know it's not exactly what you asked me, but it's kept the two things separate for me. And if anything, it's made me sadly a little bit more disillusioned about my day-to-day, because I see this force building through Bitcoin that ultimately I think there'll be more of an emphasis on saving in Bitcoin, and there won't be the need for 12,000 mutual funds and 10,000 ETFs. And so if anything, I think this accelerates to some extent the demise of the industry that I'm in, but we'll see.
Some of the most powerful advice I can give people is to think from first principles, right? So what that means is go to primary resources, right? Study math, study cryptography, study the history of finance and economics and currency. And I think a lot of people are starting to orange pill people by not talking about Bitcoin, but talk about what is broken with current financial systems. And so from there, you kind of realize that gold works, and I understand the reason why that used to work, but it's not as practical. And then Bitcoin really improves on gold. And if current systems fall apart, we're left with things like gold, and we're left with things like Bitcoin. So think from first principles is the best advice I could give.
I think smart contracts on Bitcoin are coming. RGB, Taro, these are great technologies that are being built on top of the Lightning Network. So we have Bitcoin as the base layer, Lightning as the second layer, L1, and now we are having L2 technologies like Taro, RGB, etc. Once smart contracts are a reality on Bitcoin, everything that happened in the Ethereum space, at least the good things that happened in the Ethereum space, the Solana space, will all be implemented on Bitcoin in a much better and more private fashion. And I think that will drive the next wave of Bitcoin adoption. And also I see Bitcoin in emerging countries helping a lot. We have already seen the El Salvador revolution in 1 year. A lot of disenfranchised people who did not have access to banking are now running riot. Basically, they have all the tools at their disposal. Their businesses are growing crazy. And El Zonte, which was a small fishing town, has transformed into this, surfing and tourist destination through the help of all Bitcoiners. One thing I would like to point, big shout out to RGB protocol. They have built something completely open source without any backing by VCs, and that is the kind of technology I would like to put my trust in. Once obviously it will get peer reviewed by a lot of people, it's an open source protocol. So once the small bugs are hashed out, I think that will be where the future lies, and we will implement all sorts of, it will empower developers to implement all sorts of great strategies and technologies on Bitcoin, and the revolution is on. So yeah, that's where I see Bitcoin going.
This is my opinion, but the way I see it, it's either Bitcoin or slavery. So my bet's on Bitcoin. It's either going to be a centralized digital currency, a CBDC, controlled by the government with a social credit score, like China, and we will all be slaves to the government. We look at the FTX example. We don't want a third-party risk. We want peer-to-peer money. We don't want people telling us what we can do with our money. So to me, it's Bitcoin or slavery. Again, I'm betting on Bitcoin.
What I see happening with Bitcoin is even though every day I sort of fight the feeling of feeling like I'm late and that things are moving so fast and that I feel like I'm missing something, and I balance that out with then a moment later where I'm like, wow, we're still so early in this mass adoption, in this transition from fiat to Bitcoin, and then when I think about it that way, I feel very fortunate to be this early and be able to, in a way, play a role in educating everybody about it, and that's where mass adoption comes in. Just meeting people that are on the same journey, that are seeing things the way that I do, and believe in where it's going. And I think we all just want to educate others and play off of the learning that we all have, and learn from each other, and just play our role in helping to move the adoption of Bitcoin forward.
There's a lot of different competing theories about money and about property, and at the end of the day, the one thing I think we have to remember is Bitcoin's taught us about what money actually is and what value actually is. And at the end of the day, everyone says, Bitcoin's the most valuable thing you can store your wealth in, but it's not. The most valuable thing you can store your wealth in is time. So I think Bitcoin's going to teach us not just about money, but about time. On the way up here, I was listening to Texas Slim from the Beef Initiative, and he was talking about this concept called getting back to the source of the seed, where we have this whole fiat system built on top of our worlds. And whether you look at healthcare, food, finance, education, it's so far away from where we actually started. So I can't say where Bitcoin's going to go as an asset, as a currency or anything. I hope it keeps increasing purchasing power and helping people escape poverty. But at the end of the day, I think its biggest future is as a tool to teach people and help them get back to their source so that we can actually extract value from the earth without people stealing from us in between. And that's across all sectors, in my opinion.
I think just getting the message out, letting other Bitcoiners know, hey, there are people like you, there are people who see a better, brighter, orange future, building these circular economies. There's a guy named Jordan Johnson who makes awesome Bitcoin soap, and I need to send him some stats because he just comes to these meetups and gives out his soap, and I just see these circular economies popping up, and Bitcoiners are the most generous and kind and giving people, and to just help other people who might be a little hesitant because what they see on the mainstream media, oh, it's bad for the environment, or oh, all this other FUD, to see, no, this is not the case. This is a beautiful movement. This is a movement helping people. This is a movement giving people hope. So to just spread that message and maybe help some other people who, are super into Bitcoin, but their significant other might not be so into it, find that space so both the significant other is happy, they don't have to hear it all the time, and that person gets to meet other Bitcoiners in the wild, and you just really see what this movement's all about, not just take for granted what the mainstream media says, which is 99% of the time incorrect.
I don't see Bitcoin ever stabilizing, really, in terms of price. So that's going to continue to be difficult. I think there's a lot of political battles ahead of us. But at the same time, I think that adoption is happening slowly but surely, and it's happening out of sight of the public. I really do think Bitcoin is going to become a new payment rail that is used by a lot of people and not used to buy coffee. But that's what Lightning's for. So I'm excited about that too.
Luckily, we've been honored to have some great speakers throughout our history here. Greg Foss, Larry Lepard, DJ Dictor. Next month we have Jason Lowry. So we hope by having great people spreading the gospel, it can help bring more people to mass adoption. We also plan on doing festivals and things like that. We just want to do what we can do to grow the education amongst our community. So we have big things planned. Keep an eye out for us.